In today's video we are gonna see, what if Deku Reborn is Heavenly Dragon and had Harem? This story is Death Isn't the End for Izuku by Anthony Tyler 9. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button, as your one like motivates me to bring more stories, and subscribe the channel if you are new so you won't miss our latest videos. Izuku wakes up from his sleep as he remembers how he died on Earth from the DxD universe. He remembers how he was reborn into it as a dragon as he looks around his surroundings to see if there is anything that he can make of it in order to find what he is looking for. Looking out the glass, he finds a doctor hard at work on a project that has his name on it. From what it looks like, Izuku's memories are serving him right, and he doesn't like the manic laughter that is coming out muffled. To think that we could finally find a quirkless individual after so long. I was so happy to find out he killed himself from jumping from a rooftop. The doctor laughs. Izuku realizes that the voice of the man who was talking about him is extremely familiar as he gets a closer look at the man using his draconic memory banks as well as eyes. He thinks that his body is still that of his body when he died protecting the universe from the Chaos Brigade, but when he can't get a closer look at the man, he sighs mentally. Noticing some brain fluctuations coming from Izuku's tank, the doctor makes Izuku's suspicious mind its prey as he gives Izuku what he wanted. Turning to look at the pod he was inside, he gives Izuku front full center view of what he looks like, and Izuku is suddenly wishing that he wasn't in this world anymore. It's Drive Kyudai Garaki, and he looks to be using Izuku's dying body as one of his experiments to create more Nomu. Using his quirkless genetics as a base in order to place more quirks inside of himself, Izuku takes notice that One for All isn't there anymore as he tried to activate his old quirk. But it was useless as he started to look around the place. "Ah, it seems like you have woken up my old patient. I have been putting you back together again, and it has been a lot of fun. I am currently placing the last 2 quirks needed in order to put those bastard heroes in their place as footholds for Sensei to take over the world," Kyudai said, laughing. A smaller Nomu was seen delivering an item to the doctor, and it had Izuku's interest as it was duck-like in nature, but it was deformed as well as ugly to look at, but had the telltale nature that it was a Nomu based on his brain sticking out of his head. "Come on, little Johnny, we need to tell Sensei that the boy is awake and needs to be trained once he has all of the quirks needed for his project," Kyudai said, using the little Nomu as a teleportation device. With Kyudai Garaki gone, Izuku looks around at the other test tubes and finds the high-end Nomus that he had feared back in his old world where he fought them himself. These ones were definitely in the earliest stages of development as they were gestating in their test tubes as Izuku stared at each one of them. Looking at the glass, Izuku moves his left hand in order to push against the glass, and when he sees it, he is horrified at the fact that his hybrid form is still up from his battle on Earth from Issei's world dimension. Pulling it back in and revealing a curly tuft of black hair with green highlights, as well as emerald eyes that were big and expressive. Izuku takes a better look at his surroundings when a massive spout of black goo appears in the vicinity of his test tube as Kyudai and Johnny appear again, but this time with the man who had given him a lot of scares in his old world. All for One. The man was incredibly injured at the moment as he was wearing his headpiece that gave him oxygen as well as kept up his intimidation factor towards others. "Ah, so this is the young boy you found on the ground dying of blood loss as well as pain and suffering," the man said, as he stared at the test tube. All for One place his hand on the testing tube as Izuku's hand is immediately pulled away from it as All for One chuckled. "He already knows to fear me. Good, that will be great to deal with in the future," All for One said, as he walked around the shop. Staring at the villain, Izuku decided that enough was enough, and he talked to the villain mentally with a little trick he had learned from Issei's world. Telepathy. "I don't know why I am here, but you are making a grave mistake using me as one of your pawns." All for One, Izuku said, as his voice sounded like a dragon's. All for One asked, as he looked back at Izuku. "You are going to make the biggest mistake in keeping me alive." All for One, Izuku stated once more. "You will not remember this conversation as well as what happened to you once this is over, boy. You will not treat me like I am messing with God. I am the god around here," All for One said, as Izuku in his testing chamber chuckled within the healing water. "It was just a mere warning. Those who seek power will ultimately gain it, only to lose it at the worst of times," Izuku said, before falling asleep. "Kyudai, what the hell happened to that boy? Wasn't he a coward, as well as bullied?" All for One asked, concerned. I couldn't know. I never knew that he had the courage to talk to you like that. Kyudai said, perplexed at the situation. Is this one of your projects to making a high-end Nomu? All for One asked. No, this was Project Hero Illusion. He shouldn't be capable of talking at all. Kyudai said, as he looked over his notes. Keep a close eye on this Nomu. I have a feeling that he will rebel against us at every turn we make. All for One said, disappearing in a puddle of goop. A few months pass as Izuku is still gestating in the tube. Kyudai has been making his torment a lot worse as he was beginning to lose his mind to the experimentation. But just as he was about to lose all hope, the torment stops as his quirks activate, allowing him to utilize this as his best chance to escape from All for One's range as well as power of influence. Breaking free from the tube on the one day Kyudai is not present in the hospital, because he said that even villains need days off. Izuku broke free from one of the healing tubes that housed him and crawled on the ground for a few minutes. Cough, cough, cough. Damn it, that hurt a lot. Izuku coughed as he gained some oxygen back to his lungs. Getting up from the ground, Izuku stumbled around the underground base as he made his way for the elevator in order to get above ground. Entering the elevator, he entered a code in that allowed him to go up to the top floor where all the hustling and bustling was happening inside the hospital. Exiting the elevator, Izuku stumbled about the area, telling doctors alike that he was just leaving and just a little tired. Once he made it outside, however, he looked around and found himself back within the heroic society that had killed him in the past. To think that after I died, I would be brought back here. But from what I can remember, Kyudai was killed as well as never able to be placed in prison since he was killed by quirk suppressant cuffs. Which means this is a past version of my world or a completely different one. Izuku said, as he mumbled his thoughts out loud. As soon as Izuku gets to an abandoned area, he finds a warehouse that he could hide within as he found some boxes to take his anger out on. Why can't I just die? What do I have to do just to stay dead? I have no home. Punch. I have no family. Punch. I have no way to make a new home. Slam. Why can't I just die in peace and quiet and just move on to the next life? Izuku screams at the top of his lungs as he punches through the warehouse wall. Izuku is huffing and puffing as he regains some stamina as well as endurance from his spout of anger and fury. All he just wanted to do was die, and live on in the next life, but no, the world just has to bend him over its knee and just fuck him 3 ways till Sunday until he can finally die. As Izuku sits down in a corner of the building, a man enters the warehouse wearing some capture gear as well as yellow goggles on his face. But that was a hallucination. Izuku knew it as his view changed to be revealing a younger Shigaraki Tamura as he took notice of Izuku. So this is where you went. I thought that you had escaped from Kyudai's little experiment chamber. Come on, Sensei wishes to speak to you, Shigaraki said, as he led Izuku towards a warp gate. Izuku got up from his position on the floor as he walked through the warp gate as he reappeared in front of All for One himself. Did you really think that you could escape me and my forces? I have people all over the place as well as eyes and ears as far as the eyes can see. Don't think you can escape my presence, Nomu. All for One said, growling. I am not your puppet. All for One, I am my own person. I don't know how you managed to find my body, but that doesn't mean you will defeat my spirit. Izuku said, as he growled back at the menacing villain. Never before had I had a Nomu that directly disregarded my demands as well as wishes. Your spirit will taste delectable when I am able to finally place it under the firm command of my control. All for One said, as he placed Izuku under a coma stasis, all the while tormenting his mind with the death of his family and allies he made in his old world. About another full year passes by and Izuku is seen sleeping on an operating table as he is having nightmare after nightmare, to the point all the death and destruction that he sees within his mind has made him numb to the pain. Looking over the vastness of the plains on Earth's city of Kuo, Izuku sees all the dead bodies of his friends as well as his wife Seraphal and his children. As tears are coming from his eyes, Izuku stares with a blank look on his face, as if he is waiting for the dream to restart from the beginning. The tears show him that he still feels horrible to watch their demise over and over again, but he holds in all the emotions of how it really feels deep within his heart. The dragon part of his soul encompasses him with affection as well as the memories of the life he had before they died. And Izuku's mind is brought to the very safety of his heart where he holds his most precious dreams of kindness as well as family hidden from all for one. During this whole year of pain and suffering, Izuku has heard all the commotion that has happened over that entire time frame. From all for one checking in on his subordinates who are keeping a very close eye on UA Academy as well as Class 1A to whoever the new successor of All Might's quirk is. He then gets an idea of how to just end all of heroism at its core. He looks over at Izuku's comatose body and tells his doctor something that is out of his hearing range. All Izuku can hear from outside his comatose body is the laughter of Kyudai and everything goes to black once more. A week after that event, Izuku wakes up in the middle of a torn-up town as he looks around after getting up from the ground. Cough, cough. What the hell? Izuku asked, as he slowly got up from the ground. Looking in his area, he soon found that some students were in his area, and moved to ask them where he was. As soon as he appeared in front of some of the girls that he was approaching, he noticed that something within him was urging him to reproduce with them. That isn't good. What the hell is wrong with my body? Izuku thought to himself as the girls finally took notice of him. What the hell is that? One of the girls called out scared. She was short with purple hair in a bob cut, as well as had a trademark look of having earphone jacks hanging from her ears. She had black eyes as she stared at him with pinprick pupils. What is going on? Izuku mumbled out, as a pink mist came out of him. Kyoka Jiro had been having a good day. She had been told by her class that they would be going on a trip to the USJ in order to learn how to become experts on rescue. She never wished for it to turn out like this. A day that was meant to learn how to rescue civilians as well as teach them how to be true heroes, had turned into a nightmare of the worst variety. And now she was standing in front of an 8-foot-tall man who was as muscular as All Might, and his raging boner was about 1.5 feet long. She couldn't understand how someone like him could exist with that kind of package underneath his pants. But she never prepared for it to be completely meek as well as confused as to where he was. It was also black in color with green scales on its body. What is going on? The monster asked, confused and concerned. What the hell? It can talk. Toru screeched as the monster honed in on her position. Who said that? Where are you? The monster said, in its meek voice. It can see me. Toru cried out in fear. So the direction I am looking at is where you are. But that means that you're invisible, except for your gloves and boots. Why, you'll need a suit that is made from your DNA. The monster mumbled out, as Jiro caught onto its rambling words. Aren't you supposed to kill us? Mina asked, as she moved closer to the monster. Don't get near, the monster said, releasing some pink gas. Mina, get back from it. We don't know if it's able to kill us. Jiro screamed at her friend. Mina jumped back as soon as that was heard as the monster was able to finally relax just a little bit, before Ochako moved closer to the monster. Ochako, what are you doing? Momo called out, as Ochako stayed on her seemingly mission to move closer to the monster. What happened to you? You shouldn't have these scars on your body from having a quirk. Ochako asked, as she looked into the beast's eyes. Bad people. S. Shigaraki Tamura, L. League of V Villains. Found my body. And modified it to their needs. The monster said, as Jiro immediately caught onto the word body. How did they find your body? Jiro asked, concerned. Apparently. I killed myself in this world. I was bullied to the point of suicide. The monster said, as Jiro could only think of one case that was never fixed for the family involved. That's horrible. Who would ever bully another? What was the bullying for anyway? Ochako ranted when the beast in front of them growled softly. I was Q quirkless. And nobody cares for the Q quirkless, and I was an easy target, but my mind and soul isn't from this world. I came from another. Ochako Uraraka, the monster said, as it looked at them all with a hidden feeling of caution as well as fear. Was your name? Midoriya Izuku? Jiro asked, concerned. The beast looked at her spot and she was rooted to it as the beast lowered its head towards her as he moved closer to her. As soon as his head was in front of her face, she could smell the aphrodisiacs coming from his body, and it wasn't a good smelling one either. My name is Midoriya Izuku, and I was the successor of All Might from the world I came from. I died because my allies had thought that I would turn on them, and I went out in a blaze of glory, killing myself and Shigaraki in order to flee from that world. Only to find myself in another, and killed myself there out of sadness, anger, loneliness, but most of all fury. There was a saying in that world: you should never mess with a dragon, or its horde. The monster now identified as Midoriya, Izuku said. Why is that? Ochako asked, having moved near Jiro. Because it will anger the dragon to the point of wishing for revenge. I got mine when I killed everything that harmed my life as well as family. The people that killed my wife, my daughters. My youngest was in a park with me as she died before my very eyes. What do you think would happen if a dragon's family are killed before him? Izuku asked, as he stared into both girls' eyes, his slitted eyes making them rub their legs in anticipation as well as a need that was rooting itself deep within both girls unknowingly. What did you do in order to get your revenge? Ochako asked the question for every girl present as most of them had gotten closer to him. I destroyed the very planet I was on and everyone that was held dear to the Chaos Brigade. They brought me into a war that I wanted no part of, and they wished to kill all those who were part of the supernatural. Unfortunately, my wife as well as children counted as part of it. Izuku said, as a stray tear came out of his eye. Destroy the very planet you were on. How much power did you have? Momo asked, as she was now very concerned about the creature in front of them. I was the heavenly dragon of kindness and compassion from that specific world. And my power as a heavenly dragon placed me at the top of the pecking order. Just under the god of destruction Shiva, and the dragon's god Great Red and Ophis. My power alone could cause the world catastrophes that wouldn't end here, and end with the planet being incapable of life being supported by it. Izuku finished as he placed himself on the ground in order to release all the aphrodisiacs. What are you about to do? Suyu asked, concerned. You all might want to move away from my position. I am about to release all the aphrodisiacs that are within my modified body. If you all are hit with it, you all might get killed from the sheer amount of it, or if you manage to survive, you would be very hot and bothered. Izuku said, before slowly releasing the gas from every pore on his body. With that, the girls had moved away from Izuku's position and watched as a massive cloud of aphrodisiacs had been pulled out of Izuku's form as it coalesced in the sky, blocking out the sun. Once the aphrodisiacs were outed from his system, Izuku stood up from the ground as his height had significantly lowered to where he was barely taller than Ochako. And his newer form was a scrawny teenage boy with black hair with green highlights, his eyes emerald-slitted eyes that looked at them with a very cautious look. Now all of you need to know that there is another version of me, but purely made of muscle and looks like a bird. It was made to kill All Might, Izuku said, as he passed out from the overuse of the aphrodisiacs. Izuku was running around the USJ with the girls from his past, that he specifically remembers not wishing to kill him, but at the same time going through with it since they couldn't let him survive based on chance. He was still having the urge to fornicate with the girls but was holding himself off until then in order to keep the girls' chastities. They soon arrive at the location where they find the teacher of the class Shota Aizawa being pummeled into the ground by the Nomu. Izuku immediately charged towards the Nomu as his teeth bared out against his brother-in-arms, based on genetics. The leader of the villainous charge against the heroes had noticed his arrival and sneered at him as they growled angrily. Kurogiri, kill that Nomu, it won't listen to reason. The man-child cried out, as Izuku watched as Kurogiri had looked in his direction. Izuku then stood up to full height as he increased his power output in order to make himself more intimidating towards the villain. Do you really think that you can easily defeat me, Kurogiri? I am the heavenly dragon of kindness and compassion. I will not be killed by someone so weak. Izuku roared out as he clashed with both the enemy Nomu and Kurogiri, allowing the girls time to get their sensei out of the fight. Holding off two Nomus whilst having his own power just flowing through his veins in order to burst out was incredibly difficult. As Izuku transformed into his draconic human form, he stared through the smoke and debris as he sneered at his enemies. Both opponents were staring at his form in awe as he had green scales all over his skin and face, not covering the entirety of his face, but enough to make him look extremely dangerous. All Might was sitting in the office of the principal as he was conversing with Nezu about what happened that morning. They had been talking about how he really needs to make sure that he takes his time seriously since he doesn't have enough time to find a successor. If he could find one, then that would mean he needed to spend all his time in training them to be capable of defeating all for one, since there wasn't a body found. He had been searching for the body for the last 5 years and hadn't been able to find it, and decided that since it's been 5 years since he defeated the villain, that said villain was finally dead. He was about to talk about his day when the door to his office was opened as Iida was seen entering the room with sweat coming down in treasure troves of large quantities as she stared at them with fear on her face. "The villains, Sai, have attacked. Everyone has been spread inside," Iida said, as she collapsed onto the ground. "Good job, Iida-san. I will make sure everyone is safe and sound." All Might called out, as he left the room. "Go ahead of us, All Might. We will catch up," Nezu called out on the PA system as All Might ran through the school in order to get to the USJ. All Might was on his way, and Izuku was fighting both Nomu typings as they were slowly becoming too much to fight all alone. He had actually knocked out Kurogiri, as the Mist Man was easier to knock out since all he needed to do was hit the metal collar hard enough to take all his breath away. Now it was just him and the Nomu maid to kill the man who he idolized as a child, and the thing was giving him a run for his money. If Izuku's body was that of his own before he was brought over to his new dimension, he wouldn't be having any issues with the Nomu at the moment. But that didn't matter. He really needed to end this fight before the villainous leader would be coming in to assist the Nomu. As he stood back away from the Nomu, it stood in front of him with its head held high as it stared him down. Izuku took as much breath in his mouth as his chest cavity increased in size to make sure that there was enough space for the added air. A massive ball of energy was being formed there as he stood on his hind legs looking down at the Nomu. The other students who've arrived in the plaza to take on the Nomu themselves watched as the draconic Nomu was facing off against both the Nomu creature and Kurogiri, and watched as he defeated the mist villain with seeming ease. But now all Izuku's attention was on the Nomu in front of himself as the man-child villain leader was screaming about their escape bridge being out of the game. Izuku focused all his power on the Nomu in front of himself, the ball of energy becoming larger inside his mouth as he focused all his power on the collection of energy. The Nomu stood still as it awaited another order to fight Izuku, as Izuku's breath attack was nearing its end mark of collection of energy. Once the amount of energy was collected, he stared down the Nomu with his mouth above the Nomu and released his attack on the Nomu itself. Right as the attack landed on the Nomu, All Might had broken through the building of the USJ as he stared at the scene before himself. All of his students were standing near the draconic villain as it seemingly disposed of a student of his, since he didn't think it was the Nomu was brought here. Rushing towards the draconic villain, he slammed his fist into the creature, causing it to stop its attack prematurely and fall onto its back. All Might climbed on top of it as he stared into the emerald green eyes as it stared back with slitted ones. All Might noticed a faint speckle of freckles on the maw of the draconic villain as he stared in shock. This was young Midoriya. What happened to him? He turns to where the villain was attacking and found a bunch of mush on the ground that was black as well as charred. Looking around the place, he found his students looking at him like he was crazy since he attacked the villain with a scowl. "Before I continue my attack, what happened here?" All Might asked the draconic villain. "I am merely defending the students here, All Might," the draconic villain said, staring into the navy blue glowing eyes of All Might. "Who did you just decommission?" All Might asked, as the mass behind him regenerated. "You just prevented me from destroying the Nomu made to kill you," the dragon said, as it passed out from the damage. All Might turned around at this as he saw the Nomu regenerated and standing tall against All Might as they then entered battle. Everything after this was a blur to the draconic boy, as he was slowly coming at the end of the fight since the Nomu was blasted out of the USJ and the villains were staring at the number one hero with fear and trepidation. "What? Do you not want to finish the game? I can assure you that it will be your last day if you continue," All Might taunted, as the blue-haired man-child screamed in anger. Izuku moved himself to stand behind All Might as the man-child had gained a smirk as he looked at Izuku. "Nomu kill the symbol of peace," the man-child screamed, as Izuku stared at both people. All Might looked behind himself as he kept his stance against the villain's stern as well as still. Steam was coming across himself as he was slowly powering down. As the villain man-child was screaming in laughter about how the symbol of peace was going to die, Izuku stared at the number one with a mirth in his eyes as he looked over at the villainous duo and slammed his fist onto the both of them. Kurogiri was awoken from the slamming sound as he moved to find his charge and certainly found them near death, teleporting them away. "We will return All Might, we give our word," Kurogiri said, as they disappeared into the void. As soon as they left the place, All Might watched as the dragon transformation ended, revealing a boy who had a lot of muscle in the right areas, and having some scales that were emerald in color around his body. Pink smoke was pouring from him in waves, and the number one hero could notice the pink hue to the boy's face as he was panting heavily. "Are you all right, my boy?" All Might asked, concerned. "Where can I go in order to release all the toxic fumes of aphrodisiacs?" Izuku asked, as All Might stared in the boy's face and saw the perpetual blush on his face. "Well, you can stay near me, and I will talk to Midnight in order to knock you out with enough gas from her quirk and your body can release it elsewhere," All Might said, as a wall appeared between the duo and the rest of the class. Receiving a nod from the boy, All Might focused on Smintos as the man had arrived with the rest of the UA staff as he came up. "It seems like even the number one hero can be stopped briefly," the block of a man said, before looking at Izuku. "Didn't you die a few months ago?" he asked, concernedly. "Not sure, all I remember is dying in the world I was in, and appearing in that tank filled with fluid entering my lungs," Izuku said, before collapsing on the ground in pain. Smintos, seeing the problem at hand, placed a hand on the boy's back as he rubbed it. "We need to get you to recovery, girl, she can help you with any pain," the man said, before All Might place a hand on his shoulder. "Get Midnight over here, he has too many aphrodisiacs in his system to be around women at this point in time, and he needs to be knocked out," the hero said, as Smintos flagged the woman down. As soon as the women made it to their area, she found Izuku sitting on the ground panting heavily as she understood the situation from the gas coming from his body and released her quirk on him. As soon as his vision was blacking out, he gave the woman a smile before falling to the ground, hitting his face on the ground first before anyone could stop him in time. "Damn it, now how are we going to explain the split lip and broken nose?" Midnight said, as he passed out into dreamland. "Can I be a hero too?" a young Izuku asked his mother. Inko looked at her son as she felt tears coming up from her eyes as she moved as fast as she could to be near her crying son as she hugged him close. "I'm sorry, Izuku, I'm so sorry," Inko cried out as she held her son close. "No, Mom, that wasn't what I wanted you to say. I wanted you to tell me that I could become a hero," a slightly older Izuku said, as he cried. Izuku found himself further on in his life from the new world he was in. He was standing on top of a building as he found the symbol of peace standing before him in his emaciated form. Can one become a hero like All Might without a quirk? No, I should think not. I hate to be the one to tell you this, kid, it really tears my soul apart since I was in your position at one point in life. But I personally think that you should think realistically, and find a different way to be a hero, such as the police, doctor, and others. Please just don't set out to become a hero since you saw me doing it. The job is only for the faint of heart, and it will test both your patience and your mind. It's fine to dream, just make sure it's realistic," All Might said, as Izuku stared over the edge of the building. "Hey, there might be a way for you to become a hero. Just pray you get a quirk in your next life and jump off the roof. Maybe then you might get a quirk." Katsuki's voice rang in his mind. As Izuku's form moved closer to the edge of the building, we find another Izuku standing near him from behind. "What are you doing? Are you going to give up on your dreams? That isn't how you should do this," the new Izuku said, as the old one looked back. "I can't become a hero like All Might. What's the point of living if I can't even become a hero?" Izuku, New Universe, said. "Just because the number one hero told you that you can't become a hero, doesn't mean you can't be your own hero. Jumping off the roof isn't the answer," old Izuku said, as he held his other self's arm. His eyes were showing warmth that the new one couldn't explain, and he couldn't help but start crying with a smile on his face. "Why is it an alternate version of me who is trying to stop me from committing suicide? Why can't I just die?" the new Izuku said, as he moved closer to the edge. "Death isn't the end. Not for someone like us. We would be sent to another universe or another world that will just create problems for us later on. We need to stick to life and not give up. You can't give up just like that. We kept ourselves from doing that for years. Why are you giving up now?" Izuku asked his former self. Because nobody would care if I died. Not one person would. Izuku said, as Izuku old looked at him concerned. What happened to this version of me? Izuku old asked. My parents abandoned me at an orphanage since they couldn't take care of me. I was then found out to be quirkless, and nobody wants to befriend the quirkless freak. I can't even live in peace without bullies and my peers telling me to just go off and die. Izuku said, as Izuku old stared at him. Will you combine your body with mine? Izuku old asked. What do you mean? Izuku asked. I will take over your body, you will be able to rest and live in peace as I take over your new life. I will put you back together. Izuku old said, as Izuku saw a flash of white, and Izuku old transformed into a dragon. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Izuku Midoriya, son of Blaze Meteor Dragon King Tannen. And I am the heavenly dragon of kindness and compassion. Allow me to send your soul into heaven so that you can stay within a peaceful death. Izuku old said, as Izuku looked relieved. Sure, I can finally have peace and quiet. I can finally have a dream without being in pain. Izuku said, as the white light from Izuku old sent the boy's soul to the afterlife. Izuku woke up within Recovery Girl's office as he looked around. He saw that there were multiple people in the room, and they were looking at him like he was already dead. What the hell? One of the people asked, as they looked at his heart monitor. What is going on? Izuku asked, as he looked at the people in the room. Young man, can you tell us your name and how old you are? Recovery Girl asked. My name is Izuku Midoriya, and I am 14 years old. Izuku said, as he looked at the calendar. Correction, I am 15, Izuku said, as everyone in the room looked at him in shock. Hello there, my name is Naomasa Tsukauchi, and I am basically a human lie detector. Can you tell me how you came into the hands of the villains at the USJ? The detective asked, as Izuku looked at the man. Hello Tsukauchi. All I can remember is dying from jumping off a roof about 10 months ago. I just woke up about a week prior before being put under stasis and appearing in the USJ. Izuku said, as the detective looked pensive. Okay, the dying from jumping is both right and wrong. How is that possible? Naomasa asked. I'm not the Izuku from this world. Izuku said, as he looked at the detective as well as Recovery Girl. How are you not the Izuku of this world? Recovery Girl asked. Because, in the world where I came from originally. I was fighting a villain named Tamura Shigaraki, who held the quirk All for One. And my allies after I had defeated Shigaraki, decided to kill both of us in order to keep us from becoming threats further down the line. Izuku said, as Recovery Girl looked at Tsukauchi as the man nodded with a horrified look. Who were the people who betrayed you from your world? Tsukauchi asked. Students from this very school. That includes the teachers, Izuku said, staring the detective in the eye. Okay, we will need to talk about this situation with All Might and the others. Will you stay here? Recovery Girl asked, as Izuku looked at her. Sure, not like I got anything better to do. Just got to cope with the fact that my family is gone as well as the fact that the world I just killed myself from had been targeted and killed by a rogue faction. Izuku said, as he looked at his hands. Leaving Izuku to his own devices, the two adults moved through the halls on a mission. They needed to inform the other teachers as well as principal about the delicate situation they find themselves in now. A few minutes later, the duo find themselves within the teachers' meeting room and are talking to the teachers about the presence of Kurogiri and Shigaraki Tamura being villains. They talked about their plans on how to capture them as well as place them in prison for attacking their students on a field trip. It was here that some of the other teachers talk about the quite large and green elephant in the room. I think it's time we talk about the green-haired boy sitting in the nurse's office. Midnight said, as she looked at her fellow teachers. What about him? He was with the villains, and he should be placed under arrest. Vlad King said, exasperated. He wasn't with the villains. He killed himself a few months prior to this attack and was turned into a Nomu in order to kill the students. Either that or something more terrifying. Tsukauchi said, as everyone looked at him. What do you mean? Vlad King asked. From what I heard on the boy, he wasn't from the world we are in right now. He is completely broken and shattered in the mind. He was talking about how he killed himself on a technicality of 3 different times. Tsukauchi said, as everyone looked at him concerned. What were the ways that it happened? Nezu asked. That was when Recovery Girl stepped in and told them about the first time he died, and everyone was disgusted with how it went. Going out in a blaze of glory, taking out a villain, all because you were betrayed. What a way to go. Present Mike said, solemnly. Oh, that isn't all. Apparently, he blew up a version of Earth all because of the fact that he had lost his wife and child of a different life. Tsukauchi said, as everyone was on high alert. He blew up the entire planet. They all screamed. Yes, and he didn't even lie when I heard him mention it. The third time was our world's Izuku jumping off a roof. Tsukauchi said, as everyone was completely worried for the boy's mental state. If you are worried about his mentality, it is completely fine, even though he talks about death as if it isn't the end for people. Recovery Girl said, as she stacked some papers. These are the medical reports about what happened to his body, not to mention the number of quirks he has now. Tsukauchi said, as All Might paled at the number. Wait, there are only 3 here. Present Mike said, as All Might spoke up. This boy has 3 quirks because of the fact that they are all dragon-based. A draconic transformation, draconic instincts, and draconic lust. Oh my god. They tried to make him rape our female students. All Might said, moving over to a trash bin, and threw up his lunch from earlier that day. Hearing this, everyone paled as they knew how hard it was for Yukio to keep herself from fucking every single male in the vicinity whenever she was going through a heat. Is there anything else we should be worried about, Recovery Girl? Nezu asked, as he looked at the old woman. You should be careful around the boy. He doesn't even trust me when it came to talking to him. He was very distant with me and Tsukauchi. He might try to make sure that we keep our distance until he knows he can trust us. The previous versions of us betrayed his sense of trust, and with his mind shattered and broken, he won't trust anyone until he can bring himself back from that point. Recovery Girl said, as she left the room. Izuku sat on the bed as he thought about everything that had happened to him. He still had the draconic powers he held when he died from the underworld. But he didn't know how much magic was in this world, so he would have to keep his own magic to himself. He didn't want people knowing that he could leave at any time he wished if he felt threatened. Since he was incredibly weak at the moment, he took any chance he had when someone came nearby to scare them into leaving him alone. It was about an hour later when a man entered the room. He had blonde hair, and the bangs were hanging low on his head as he stared at Izuku. It's you," the man said, as he looked completely guilty. All Might," Izuku asked, tears forming, jumped from the bed and decided to hug the man. All Might was concerned with what was happening but didn't stiffen in the hug as he returned it to the boy. It's been so long since I'll last seen you," Izuku said, as All Might looked at the boy worriedly. What do you mean by that, young man?" All Might asked. Why, you were my mentor in my world," Izuku said, as All Might looked at him slack-jawed. Izuku doesn't know how long the hug between him and All Might last, but the most he can do is alleviate the guilt that is within his hero about this version of his self's decision. As soon as the hug is pulled away from the other, Izuku looks at his mentor as All Might stared at the boy with tons of guilt piled on top of his already feeble mind. "I'm sorry for the Izuku who was living his life of hell here. He didn't want you to think that you were the main cause of his death," Izuku said, as he was unknowingly crying. All Might places a hand behind the boy's back as he tried to get himself together. When he stops himself from crying, he looks at his mentor in the face. "Is the others in the campus?" Izuku asked, worriedly. "Nobody is here within the confines of this room, nor the school that might pose a threat to you," All Might said, as Izuku nodded his head. He sat on the cot as he thought about what they should be doing at the moment, and that is when All Might spoke up. "The staff of UA are trying to figure out what they should do about you. You were a young boy who was taken advantage of, a young boy who I sentenced to death, even though I was unaware of your status as well as what kind of day you had," All Might said, looking into Izuku's eyes. "Like I said, it wasn't entirely your fault. Bakugo told me something that day that you had no idea could cause me to jump," Izuku said, as All Might became alarmed. "Bakugo said something the same day I crushed your dreams," All Might asked, very concerned. "Why, yeah. I just never told you about it since I never took his advice, in the world I came from. In my world, Bakugo told me to commit suicide essentially. But the way he said it to me, made me know that he really didn't mean it. I am not sure about this version of me knew about this. Izuku said, as he looked at the floor remembering what the boy told him. Nobody would even care if a quirkless kid was committing suicide, nobody even cares about me. My mother doesn't even know about my existence, it's like she has forgotten about me. The new Izuku told his old self. Izuku remembered what the newer version of himself told him, and he couldn't help but relate to him as nobody cared for him in the old world he came from. The world with Issei and Searsex was long gone, and he probably will go to hell ironically for the sin of destroying the world. Are you all right, Midoriya Shonen? All Might asked. Will the students of this timeline get in trouble for what I tell you all? Izuku asked, showing that even when he was betrayed, he still cared for the well-being of others. It only depends on the severity of the problem at hand. All Might said, as Izuku looked at the ground with tears in his eyes. It regards how I died the first time. Izuku said, as All Might looked increasingly worried. Did you tell Tsukauchi about what happened in your first death? All Might asked, concerned. And not all of it. Just that the UA teachers and some of the students here were behind it. Izuku said, as All Might nodded his head. What was I doing at the time of your death? All Might asked. All Might. You weren't there to protect me, because you were already dead. Izuku said, as All Might gains a fearful expression. In the teacher's lounge Aizawa Shota was laying on the couch. He had been injured slightly when that Shigaraki Tamura guy placed his fingers on his elbow. Being the pro that he was, he just had Chio heal him so that he could get back to work within the next few days. What he didn't prepare for was All Might entering the room with the kid that they were trying to figure out what to do with. Aizawa-san, we need to talk about what has happened in his timeline. All Might said, urgently. What do you mean, All Might? I am trying to get some much-needed rest, courtesy of Chio telling me to rest in order to get out on patrol tomorrow. Aizawa said, as he stared at the hero. Aizawa-san, this is about the first death young Midoriya had suffered from. All Might said, causing everything in Aizawa Shota's brain to malfunction and sit upright. What does that have to do about anything? Aizawa asked, increasingly annoyed. Midoriya Shonen, do you want to tell him about what happened? All Might asked the brat. I'll be fine telling everyone about it. The boy said, I guess you want me to bring everyone on the UA staff to hear about this? Aizawa asked, as he was groaning internally. Yes, Aizawa-san, we will need everyone present for this talk. It will be informative about what happened in the future. All Might said, as Aizawa said about contacting every single member of the staff. This had better be important, since I have a patrol tomorrow morning that I will be taking. Aizawa said, before heading towards the meeting room. Once everyone was gathered in the meeting room, Izuku stood in front of all the teachers, as he suddenly got stage fright. Are you sure that you want to talk about it yourself, Midoriya Shonen? All Might asked, concerned. The boy had been quiet for a while now and all the teachers were increasingly concerned as well as annoyed about it. Well, what do you all want to know first? Izuku asked, as he stared at the staff. What happened to Tamura Shigaraki after blowing yourself up? Present Mike asked, as all the teachers looked at him offended. What? Someone had to tear the band-aid off at some point. Present Mike called out. To answer your question, me and him were taken to another world, one where supernatural creature, such as angels, fallen angels, and many more species of them, roamed the world under the disguise of humans. Izuku said, as Present Mike looked a little miffed. Why did you choose to blow yourself up in the end, young man? That had to have been extremely painful to go out. Chio asked, devastatingly concerned. I was already on death's door, one of my classmates. Aoyama-kun. He blasted a hole through my chest as well as Shigaraki's chest after I had placed the quirk suppressant cuffs on his wrists. Izuku said, that doesn't answer my question, young man. Chio said, as she looked a little angered. That is what happened. I swear. I saw my classmates on a hill nearby and noticed how they were all looking at me like I was a villain. Well, most of them anyway. Izuku said, looking at the ground, tears brimming to the surface. Who were the ones behind the plan of killing you before you could defeat Shigaraki Tamura? Nezu asked as he stared at the boy. It was you, sir. Izuku said, as he looked at the chimera. What? The chimera asked, concerned. You came up with the idea that at some point down the road, I would become villainous to keep society safe from all villains. And it was you, Uraraka Ochako, Bakugo Katsuki, and all of Class 1A who devised my killing. You were behind the plan, the class were the ones to carry it out. Izuku said, looking at the ground as tears streamed down his face. He hated bringing up those memories, he had gotten over them as he didn't wish to see their faces ever again. Nezu was quiet as he thought about what actions Izuku displayed in that world to make him think that he would be a threat in the future. Can you tell us who out of us teachers allowed this kind of assassination plot to go out like this? Aizawa asked, finally speaking after an hour of hearing this. All of you were in on the idea, sir. But you, Izuku said, as everyone looked at the teacher in amazement. What do you mean all of us were in on having you killed? Aizawa asked, more concerned. All of the UA teachers, except for you, sir, were in on the assassination plot against me and Tamura Shigaraki. Izuku said. Aizawa sat down as he thought about what actions the problem child had done to warrant that kind of reaction from the principal. What actions have you done in your past that relegated Nezu of all people to think that assassinating a kid was really worth the lives saved in the future? Ectoplasm asked. None. I had basically sent myself into a fight knowing that there was a high probability that I'd die. Other than that, I basically went into every fight thinking that I'd be a martyr. Izuku said, looking away from All Might. Are you all right in the head, young man? Chio asked, increasingly concerned. No, I'm not all right. I have witnessed my friends, best friends betray me, was sent to another world where I became brothers with Shigaraki himself, gained a new family only to watch as they were killed in front of me. Only to then not even 10 days later blow up an entire planet in rage at how I lost the family I had worked so hard to get. Izuku said, as he fell to his knees crying. He hadn't had the time to let everything sink in as he felt that he shouldn't need to cry, he was the upcoming symbol of peace in his world. And to have it taken away from him based on a baseless rumor, hurt. Then to be reborn into another realm where supernatural creatures of the night were basically saying hello to humans on the daily. Create a new family after gaining enough power to essentially fight God, only to lose them because some humans didn't wish to have supernatural powers lording their skills and might over them. It really fucked his brain up to the point that he just wanted his life to be over, just like the boy who he sent to the afterlife, the boy who just wanted to die. Before he could devolve into more deprecating thoughts, one of the teachers stopped him before he could. Looking up with watery eyes, he found that it was both his mentor from another world, and Aizawa-sensei who gave him the much-needed hug he needed. Leaning into the hug he cried out as all the pain and suffering he had gone through came out as he held onto them like they were a lifeline, like if he didn't let go, they would disappear. As soon as Izuku calmed himself down, he didn't know how tired he had been when he suddenly passed out in Aizawa's arms. Looking up from the sleeping boy, Aizawa looked at each and every teacher in the room and sighed heavily. Can someone please get this problem child off me before I try and adopt him? He asked. Izuku was walking around the halls of Ua as he tried to remember what happened back in his old world to it. The school that he remembered had become a sky base where the heroes could stay on whilst the heroes were on the patrol on the ground when villains attacked. He looked at every nook and cranny of the place as he remembered what had happened back in the original place he came from. The building was used as a primary battlefield for him and Shigaraki as they battled it out before changing locations.